Hey guys, I'm back with some more Final Fantasy VII. This will be a short video focusing on the stagger system that's part of the game's combat mechanics. This will be part 1 of a hopefully 5-part series focusing first on this core mechanic, and then I'll be doing one in-depth video for each of the 4 playable characters. I'll be updating this video's description with links to all the upcoming videos, and I'll also create a Final Fantasy VII playlist for all of them, so make sure to check it out in the channel page, and consider subscribing if you don't want to miss any of them or if you just like the sound of my voice. If you haven't seen my previous video on this game, definitely look it up as well, as it has some more general tips that you might find useful. Now, the game has been out for less than a week, so there's bound to be more information and discoveries done as more people try stuff out. So if you find something interesting to share, please leave your comments below. This helps keep the video relevant and helps people that might see it in the future. Everything I mention here is stuff that I found out through my own playthrough of the game and by looking at forums, so big thanks in particular to the community over at the Final Fantasy VII Remake subreddit. Okay, let's take a close look at how this pressure and stagger system works. As you probably know by now, enemies have a stagger gauge, which, once full, will cause them to drop to the floor and receive massive amounts of damage from each of your attacks. You don't necessarily need to stagger every enemy you encounter, since many times it's just faster to kill them straight away. But against elite enemies, bosses and mini-bosses, staggering them can be your only way to deal decent amounts of damage. Before getting staggered, enemies can briefly enter a pressured state where it's easier to increase their gauge, but it's not something that has to happen for you to be able to stagger somebody. Being pressured doesn't cause them to take more damage from attacks, it just means the stagger gauge is easier to fill during that period. Now, it's impossible to give you a blanket statement on the fastest way to stagger every enemy, because it's specific to each one, and it can actually be quite complicated and not very intuitive in some cases. For most enemies, hitting them with an elemental spell that they're weak to is pretty effective and will increase their gauge considerably. Others might need to get pressured first to have any noticeable progress at all, which begs the question, how do you pressure them? Your best bet is to make sure that you have the assess materia to gather information, since you can get a pretty good idea of how to do it by reading the yellow text on the left. Sometimes it's as simple as using the specific spell or dealing enough damage. For enemies with multiple parts that you can target, which is the case for many bosses, breaking off one of them will often get them pressured and increase their gauge, though sometimes it's not really necessary. Other enemies require that you meet more specific conditions, like blocking or dodging a specific string of attacks, hitting them with something that they're weak to when they're about to launch a special move, or even countering them using Cloud's counter move. Other enemies can be pressured by using spells they're not necessarily weak to. This is one of the things that I really enjoy about the combat system, since learning how to stagger some of the tougher enemies can be quite a challenge, but incredibly rewarding once you can do it consistently. Just keep trying stuff out if you can't seem to figure out an enemy, and try to apply something that worked for a similar one. The other important aspect to grasp about this system is that some of your abilities and attacks have specific interactions with the gauge and the stagger mechanic. Cloud's Focus Thrust is a great way to increase the stagger gauge, especially when enemies are pressured. Tifa's Overpower ability also works incredibly well when used in conjunction with this. Just wait for an enemy to get pressured, pop Overpower, and then Focus Thrust. Overpower basically grants an increased stagger bonus to all abilities and attacks for a short time, so Focus Thrust will massively increase the stagger gauge if used right after it. Performing standard attacks using Cloud's Punisher mode is also a good way to increase it if you can't use any abilities. There's one more concept to understand here, and the descriptions on some of these abilities really don't help. When an enemy gets staggered, he takes 160% more damage, but that bonus can be increased. Now, the description for Focus Thrust states that it increases stagger considerably. This means the stagger gauge, not the stagger bonus. Tifa's focus strike, which is her evade then attack move, also says the same thing, and it also means the gauge, not the stagger bonus. Same goes for Barrett's focused shot and Aerith's ray of judgment. The way to increase the stagger damage percentage is to have Tifa use her triangle skills. Make sure that you use Unbridled Strength twice, then unleash Triangle 3 times in a row. This is the single most effective way of increasing that damage bonus. Just make sure that after that you deal damage with your most powerful attacks and you're not just increasing the bonus while the AI controlled characters just use their basic attacks. Try to get as many ATB bars full right before you fill the gauge to maximize the amount of skills and spells that you get to use while the enemy is vulnerable. Also keep in mind that more powerful versions of spells take longer to cast, which might lead to you getting interrupted and losing the ATB bar. If you're looking to put an enemy in the pressured state, using the weakest spell is often enough to do it. So there you go, a quick little focused video for you guys. As I mentioned, I'll be doing more videos on Final Fantasy VII, so if you like this video, please subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.